Welcome to Reliability Matters, a podcast for the electronic assembly industry. Each episode covers topics related to reliability, best practices, and environmentally responsible assembly techniques, with insights from experts across the electronic assembly industry. Now, here's your host, Mike Conrad.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Reliability Matters podcast. I'm so glad you're with me today. My guest today is Joel Scutchfield. He's with Koh Young and has 35 years in the printed circuit board assembly industry. Beginning on the manufacturing side in 1986, that's a year after I started, so we're both veterans, I think it's safe to say. First with Texas Instruments and then later with United Technologies Corporation. In the mid-1990s, he transitioned to the, I'll call it the dark side, to the supply side, that's the side I'm in as well, of the industry, where he used his process and manufacturing experience to help customers implement the best tools, materials, systems, and solutions for their PCB assembly and test applications. Over his career, he held positions in the areas of manufacturing engineering, process engineering, engineering management, operations management, sales engineering, and regional sales management, sales business ownership, and company-wide sales management. So he has run the gamut of experiences within this industry. Joel graduated from Purdue University with a bachelor's in engineering and industrial management. Joel began his career at Koh Young as the Americas sales manager, a position he held from December 2014 to January 2019. In January of 2019, he was promoted to director of sales for the Americas, where he served in that capacity until October 2021. You can see he's got a pretty steep ladder he's climbing. And in October of 2021, he was promoted to general manager of SMT Business Operations and director of sales for the Americas. I think the ink is still wet on his business cards. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you. That's quite an introduction. And,
I know it probably just causes you to lose your breath just hearing it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Like I said, it's a lot of stuff, and it just reminds me that Mike, we're not getting any younger, right? So
we certainly are not. Although looks are deceiving, right? It looks like we all got in this industry when we were 12, right?
That's
the only way
we
could
still
look
people.
like this.
Exactly.
Yeah, I tell people that working in this industry is a life sentence. This industry is the Hotel California. You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave.
But you can never leave.
All you do is you go to the same shows, you just wear different badges, but you're in it for life.
I went through a period where I did kind of question maybe what I was doing here for a minute. And, when medical was booming and all of this other emerging stuff was happening, 10, 12 years ago. And I finally got to the point where I guess I just realized that this is working for me, right? And there's value in having the experience of all those things that you just alluded to. So why not embrace it and ride it to the end? And I think that was a good decision. I see a very bright future for this industry as the convergence to electronics and expansion of mechanical to electronics is just going to continue ongoing. So I think we're in a good place. So we'll keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, and there's not too many industries one can work in where in any given moment, in any situation of any day, you are near the products your industry built, right?
That's right.
Maybe the auto industry, but just look around. Everything, within 10 feet of you is one of these or some electronic device, and we all built that. You had a hand in that. I had a hand in that. It's for as vast of an industry, for as much of an omnipresent industry as we are, we're a small group. There's only a few players building a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to believe. I mean, when you go back to the old NEPCON West days back in the late 80s and early 90s and how big that show used to be, and of course, we don't have the business here that we once had in terms of the volume manufacturing, but the industry as itself is still very prominent and certainly plays a key role in the global economy and quality of life as we go forward. Right, Everything that we're doing is making lives for everyone around us easier, right? By automating and providing a computer in the hand, as you said. Or showed. It's not going anywhere. We'll put it that way, right? So we'll continue to embrace it.
And you brought up the perfect segue for the theme of the show is, there's electronics have become so embedded in our life, and they're responsible for everything from, waking us up in the morning, helping us be productive during the day, keeping us safe.
Right.
They're just so much part of our lives, and reliability has probably never been more important. It's always been important, but it's never been more impactful on every part of our life than it is today. But before we jump into the weeds on inspection technologies, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, let's talk about the unique business challenges presented by the 800-pound virus in the room, the global pandemic. In our business, your business, my business, when I'm not looking into a camera, we both sell capital equipment, and capital equipment selling is a very hands-on experience. A lot of people want to run demos. They want to see their product in one of your machines. They want to maybe go see some of your machines in other factories and talk to people about their experience. And it's a very hands-on, tire-kicking process. So how did Koh Young and how did your team transition into a hands-off world from a tire-kicking world?
Yeah, it's been interesting, but we've all been in this together as as we've seen and heard so many times, and it's really I separate it into two sides, right? We have our technical services support team, and then we have our sales team, and what we found was that the doors never really closed to our technical service and support team. Customers want machines installed. They want training. They need support when they need it. So our service team was back on the road, actually back on airplanes in June of 2020, and we've not looked back. In July, we started seeing customers again on the sales side, but a little bit more limited. Drivable, that type of thing. Not really getting on airplanes until. A little bit later in the year. I think once we rolled the calendar into 2021, that started to open up a little bit. And, it's all predicated on the customer's willingness or capability, in some cases, because of company policy, to actually let us in the door, right? So we got a little creative, and, certainly we took advantage of the remote capabilities that exist today and have just expanded or existed at the time and have just expanded since this whole thing started. And I think what we're finding out now is that's not going to go away, right? We have a capability here, and we had it at that time, right? WebEx, GoToMeeting have been around for years, and now we have things like Zoom and Teams and other avenues. But I think the reality is that we found out that it can work a little bit, right? We opened our doors here in our Atlanta and Guadalajara demo centers probably the fall of last year, and started seeing customers come in for demos and training about that time, and it's been pretty much nonstop since. So, of course, we follow all the CDC guidelines and have the protocols in place, and do what we do to keep everyone safe. But aside from the customer visits, I would say it's been pretty much business as usual since probably late Q3, early Q4 of last year. And I think going forward, Mike, what we're going to see here is, if I went to see a customer 4 times a year, maybe now I go see them twice a year, and the other 2 occasions we'll meet like this in a remote capacity. Now, we'll see as the next couple of years go by, and hopefully at some point we get this completely behind us. There's certainly no substitute for that face-to-face interaction, and
right. Yeah, I think the remote
tremendously.
Yeah, I think the remote toothpaste is out of the tube. It's not going back in, but it'll be used more strategically. Right now, it's used almost for everything. I think it'll go back to a kind of a more strategic use and a greater use than we've seen prior.
I think that's very accurate.
Let's talk about inspection technology, shall we? And
sure.
I'd like to break it down into 2 categories: SPI, solder paste inspection, and AOI, automated optical inspection. and then there's all sorts of choices within those realms, 2D, 3D, et cetera. So
There are.
let's kind of break it down a little bit. When it comes to inspection technology, whether it's SPI or AOI, there are 2D and 3D, as I'd mentioned. Are there specific defects only detectable using 3D? And if so, what would they be?
Well, 2D is great for surface inspection, let's say, right? In the case of SPI, that would be kind of a bomb site of the pasted pad, where we can see coverage, right? And we can see position, but that's really about it. And similarly on the AOI side, we're looking at presence, absence, polarity, part marking certainly as being anomalies that we can track with 2D capabilities. But when you start talking about basically anything with a Z value to it, height, 2D has basically met its match, right? I mean, we can use RGB lighting to verify, let's say, solder shape with reflective surfaces such as solder, but for the most part, the 3D element brings in everything to do with valid solder inspection for sure. Also, part height verification becomes much more reliable. And again, on the SPI side, we're talking about volume, right? We're talking about identifying the value of every pixel on that pasted brick, if you will, or in the case of AOI, the component itself, and from that being able to now measure height very repeatedly. So, the 2D is still being used very widely on the back end, right, for module and box build. But we are looking very hard at how we can apply and better that process with the application of 3D, of adding in that height measurement capability.
If I'm a customer with a limited budget and I have a limited application, are there cases where you would just go, Mike, keep your 3D money in your pocket. All you need is 2D. And if that's the case, what are the applications that are either better suited for 2D or equally suited for 2D?
Well, I guess, again, it kind of comes back to what I talked about. If there's no need to do any measurement per se, if we're just looking at an image or again, in our case, a pasted brick or a component, and we want to verify, number one, that it's there, number one, that it's the right part number, or number two, that it's the right part number, number three, that the polarity is correct. Again, we can do all of those things with 2D. Again, positional, I mentioned, right? X, Y. I can see if that paste is on the pad or not with 2D. So that's really where it ends. And that was the application used in the early days prior to our invention of the first 3D, true 3D AOI system that the market has seen back in 2010. So 2D was basically ran the gambit, right? It was maximized. I mean, people found ways to get as much out of it as they can, including doing some solder inspection, as I said, using the RGB concept, where we can detect flat and mid steep and steep. But again, to do true measurement based inspection, and really, Mike, it's so important as we move forward now into smart factory realization and the application of AI to have that measurement-based information, right? And not only have it, but have the right kind of data set to make it work, right? Not all 3D is created equal, and I can go into that a little bit more as we talk today as well. But
cool. Yeah,
that's really where we kind of cut the wheat from the chaff, right? As an old farm boy would say.
Yeah. Several months ago, well, sometime earlier this year, I had Patrick Stimpert from Matrix Group on my show. and we were discussing a joint, among other things, we were discussing a joint study, a white paper that was produced with your company, Koh Young, and their company. And Patrick made a comment. This was not the theme of the show, but he made a comment that just stuck with me. And I think I asked him, with all the labor cost advantages of overseas assembly houses, can the U.S. compete? Or is the U.S., relegated to a specific subsection of our industry? And he adamantly stated that it's all about optimization and efficiency and automation. And if you can automate your process, then any company, any country can compete with any company in any other country. You've just taken human labor, off the equation, and your machines cost pretty much the same in China or Vietnam or Malaysia or Mexico than they do in the United States, roughly. So, it's a level playing field if you can rely heavily on automation and optimization and efficiency. So how do AOI and SPI machines aid in process optimization? How do they feed that monster?
Well, first of all, I agree with Patrick. This has been a highly automated process, if you will, surface mount manufacturing from the get-go, right? And so, we're in a good spot from that perspective to be able to keep and now bring back, as we're seeing, reshoring, nearshoring, I guess is another term that we're seeing, and we can talk a little bit more about that as a business impact going forward. But because we are highly automated and we're continuing to expand that as we go, and now add to the mix the fact that the efficiencies that you talked about are kind of the next level driver. These machines, these tools, SPI, AOI systems are really delivering what we see as the currency for smart factory realization, right? It's from these tools that the data is derived, which creates actionable activity, right, to optimize, fix, improve the process, whether it's by a human manually or through the use of artificial intelligence, where we can now do a lot of that, and we'll do more of that going forward automatically, as you said, reducing the need for the human element. And again, we're not necessarily looking to completely eliminate the human element, but we do need to continue to strive to use again that right kind of data set, and I'll talk more about that as we go, to make the improvements, to make systems more intuitive, more automated, rely less on the human element, and from that increase those efficiencies, lower those costs, which is, as Patrick noted, is what's going to keep and potentially bring back that business to our shores. So I think he's spot on. But the data that we're deriving from these tools is cornerstone to Industry 4.0 and smart factory realization. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And now the race becomes how do we best apply it, right? Who has that best data set to truly achieve, and who does not? And I've said many times it's that creation of that data set through the tools that manufacturers or suppliers are providing, by the technology they're employing, the subsystems they're using, the amounts and reliability and accuracy of the data they're getting, that allows everything else to be applied, right? Whether it's artificial intelligence or just making correct adjustments on the line real time. And so yeah, I guess long story longer, they're really important.
Yeah, it's a exciting proposition that we could compete with the rest of the world. There's certain things we do very well, and certain things other parts of the world do very well, and that should probably stay that way. We have a certain expertise. Other countries are known for a certain expertise. There's nothing wrong with that, but to be able to compete on a level playing field, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it certainly starts there. But now we're seeing maybe we're kind of superseding the the capability side of things, or the expertise side of things, and making the priority having things close to us, right? As opposed to well, they do it better there, we'll let them do it there. Well, we're going to figure out a way to do it better here, so it's close to us, so
right.
we don't run into what we're seeing today again, with the supply chain situation being what it is, and part shortages and everything else. So
yeah, I was going to say it'd be nice to be able to compete with a level playing field if we can just get people to show up to work, and if we can get components through the door.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, do you have 1,000 Koh Young machines sitting off the coast of Los Angeles? This is near where I live, and my wife and I like to ride our electric bikes along the shore, and literally we go to Long Beach, and if we look out on very close to the shore, we can see a whole bunch of ships. In fact, it's so bad that they've decided to relocate those ships 100 miles off the coast, because it's starting to affect the air quality. Because these ships are, even though they're not moving, they're operating, right? Their engines are running. So
that's right.
It's causing our air to get stinky, near the coast. So
it's a mess.
Yeah. Are you seeing? Is that a challenge for you guys, or do you fly on your machines, or do you put them in containers? Or
well, it's certainly a challenge. Most of the machines that we bring over are in containers, and come by sea. We occasionally will fly machines as needed. The problem, Mike, is that the cost of both has just skyrocketed. And
just an empty container is 5 times more than it was before.
Exactly. We had a quote on flying a machine that we wanted to bring over, provided to us about 2 weeks ago. In fact, it was while we were at the show in Minneapolis, and one of my guys comes up to me and says, "Hey, that machine for customer XYZ, $42,000 to fly a single machine." Now, we used to be able to fly machines for $5-6 grand.
Strap it to a first class seat, and it's cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's amazing. So the costs have gone up, and we can't pass all of those costs on to our customers. So
right.
we're certainly charging a little bit more now for a ground freight. Once we have it here and we get control of it, we've got a truck driver shortage going on. We've got something you're familiar with, which is California regulations that say that truck can't come here unless it meets.
Can't come to the port. It has to have an engine that's 6 hours old or less.
Exactly.
Every 6 hours you have to change out the engine. Yeah.
So there's all of these factors, and Marcy, who handles our logistics, God bless her. I mean, she does a phenomenal job. We fortunately have not been overly affected up till this point, Mike, by either the parts shortage or the shipping situation. We'll see where that goes going forward. The reason for being able to still stay in a good spot from a delivery perspective on the machine side is we've had to increase our inventory. So there is a cost associated with that as well. So
Sure.
So yes, I do have machines out in Long Beach Harbor. We're hoping to get them, sooner than later. But what we've had to do is basically go to a constant stream, as opposed to ordering, say, on a quarterly basis. And we've always carried decent inventory in our and have been able to typically deliver very quickly, which is something our customers like a lot. But
the irony is our two companies and all the other companies, we're all contributing to the problem because we're stocking up on inventory, right? If we have the opportunity to buy a year's worth of a component, we'll buy a year's worth. We went from just in time to just in case. So we're all doing that, and that exacerbates the problem. But it's what do? You have to service your customers. Yeah. So let's go back to some technical stuff. I could talk about ships in the harbor all day long, but on modern inspection systems, how much of the analysis, or maybe the image that one sees, is actually no? Let me make it analysis. How much of the analysis is actually conducted by the operator versus the machine? I liken that to like an MRI machine for the medical industry. There are radiologists who all they do all day long is interpret this gray matter, that they see. And even surgeons aren't the final, I guess they're the final arbiter of it, but they rely on a radiologist's view because they're trained specifically in that. So how much in your world, how much interpretation is done by the operator versus the machine's maybe AI engine that says this is no good?
Right. So it's a great question. And, as we implement more artificial intelligence through machine learning and deep learning, we are taking some of that analysis need away from the operators. But at the surface level, I mean, certainly, going back, 3, 4, 5 years ago, before we really started jumping into this AI arena, basically the machines are providing the data, the measurement results by which the actionable assignments are created, and the operator can then go and make the adjustments. So I think that is still the case in many areas, because AI is being applied differently by different suppliers, and and in different areas of the line. So I think the best way to answer that, Mike, is to say that again, at its core, the operator is still needed to to make judgments, to do something with that data, right? Once they have it, if it's a true failure, I need to go, I have a trend, I need to go make an adjustment somewhere else, right? But very quickly, and we're already seeing this in certain areas with the application of our KPO tools, Koh Young Process Optimizer, for both the print process and the mounting process, the ability to automatically make the changes needed for things like squeegee, pressure, speed, and release on the printer, and also anomalies with respect to positional accuracy, XY, feeder, spindle, nozzle issues that we're finding in a pre-reflow AOI environment, and basically taking the operator out of that process completely. So again, it's certainly trending that direction, and kind of going back to the original discussion point that we made here in terms of how do we stay competitive, how do we give our customers the best ability to be as efficient and as profitable and productive as possible. It's now through the use of those kinds of tools, and that's the future. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it.
Right. You mentioned AI a couple of times so far in this conversation. So let's talk about AI. The term artificial intelligence, or AI, is, to me, it's a very slippery term. It's like back in the 70s, everything was turbo. Everything was turbo, right? It's like, you're the turbo option. And it really meant nothing, but except maybe it turned up the power a little bit.
Sounded good.
It sounded good. And I hear AI all the time right now. And I'm quite convinced that half the time I'm hearing AI, it's a marketing term. I'm not saying that for you guys, but clearly for your application, AI makes a lot of sense. But everyone uses the term AI, whether it truly is AI or not. So tell me, in the world of inspection technology, the world you live in, what is artificial intelligence, and what value does AI bring?
Well, so we have placed a significant emphasis on the use of artificial intelligence, Mike, and that now. That's a broad spectrum, right? Within that world, we have machine learning. Within the machine learning world, we have deep learning, where we're really looking very hard at models and trending, and basically creating algorithms that kind of learn as they go. AI is all around us, right? And I think that was the point that you were alluding to. The key, in my mind, on this, and basically the ability to pursue more artificial intelligence capability or value within what we do with our world, inspection technology specifically. It kind of goes back to that point I made earlier with regards to the data set, right? It really starts with having a very robust, very accurate very repeatable data set that is of significant or significant statistical relevance, let's say, right? So, kind of into the big data conversation. So, you know, it's like climbing a ladder. You don't get to the second or third floor, you know, by taking rungs 5 and 6 at a time, right? You go one at a time, and by doing the things required to get past the first rung, you've built a base, right? And now you can then do the next and the next and the next. So when we talk about smart factory, when we talk about using artificial intelligence to take us down this path, again, it starts with the data set. It starts with having, you know, the right kind, measurement-based, parametric, objective, proflometric, accurate measurement-based data, gotten the right way with subsystems that, again, are very accurate and deliver a statistically relevant amount, such that now we can apply that to artificial intelligence or anything else from a data analysis perspective. So, you know, we're using it in our KPO piece that I talked about earlier, for the print process, for establishing that protocol, that mechanism for being able to make automated adjustments to speed, pressure, and release based on what that modeling and that artificial intelligence is telling us, our artificial intelligence engine is telling us we should do. So that's there, right? That's there today. Similarly, the feedback from a pre-reflow AOI system, where now, again, positional and anomalies related to feeder spindle nozzle can all be adjusted automatically through the use of artificial intelligence. Auto programming is an area where we're using it extensively, and then now looking at things like auto defect classification, auto tuning. Again, I think the key here, Mike, is you know, you can go buy an AI engine off the shelf, right? But does that really best align with your objectives as a systems provider, as a solutions provider, where maybe it's better to create that proprietary domain, that proprietary engine based on that data set that I just described, that's made up of all those various elements. And that's what we've done. That's what we've chosen to do. We have our Koh Young Research America office in San Diego, where we have 25 PhD level type people in there creating these proprietary engines for use of the data set that our technology, our systems are providing. So, you know, we see that as a certain advantage and something that has allowed us to kind of get to the, you know, jump in front of everyone from an AI applications perspective.
The Koh Young Brain Trust in San Diego.
There you go.
Yeah. Lock the door, put crackers under the under the door,
watch
feed them and water them once in a while.
That's right. Watch the smoke roll out from under.
Exactly.
Bit bangers, they call them, right?
Oh, that's yeah. So for this conversation, I'm dividing inspection systems into two categories: after printing and before reflow. So that would be SPI, solder paste inspection, and then after reflow, automated optical inspection. In order of importance, the number one goal is to avoid defects rather than repair the defects. I mean, number one, don't let no escapes, nothing bad gets out, right?
Right.
But
Absolutely.
Once we've come up to that strategy, then we want to fix the problem as early in the process as possible so we can repair it for less cost. So, you know, we don't want to, if we can avoid it, we don't want to rework a component, because the moment we put a soldering iron to it, we introduce all sorts of potential liabilities.
Right.
You know,
right.
we can create one problem and we can solve one problem and create 2 or 3 more. So when it comes to SPI and AOI, what are the defects that are not detectable by SPI? Where does SPI and AOI have their place in inspection? And how many problems can I catch earlier in SPI that I would rather catch before things get reflowed, and now I have to put an iron to it to fix it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And one of the things that we really stress in our approach is, we come upon customers from time to time that don't have any inspection technology. There are still a few out there, right? Or maybe what they have is really, really old and they're looking to upgrade. And, our MO has always been to advise that if you only have the money to buy one piece of equipment at this particular time, start with solder paste inspection, right? The chart you're showing here talks about the fact that, roughly 70% of all bad things that happen from a solder perspective come from that print process. Now, that's not to say it's the printer itself, let's say, but it's the entire process. It's the paste, it's the aperture design, it's pad design, it's the characterization of that print process or lack thereof that is creating defects. And we like to say, if you're not utilizing solder paste inspection, you're literally printing in the dark. You don't know what you don't know, and I can't tell you how many times we've implemented solder paste inspection technology to a customer that swore up and down they didn't have a problem, only to see their eyes just explode and understand very quickly that what they were doing is they were making up for that further down the line, as you said, right? And that's kind of the whole.
They thought it was part of the process, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like
they were doing what problem? I don't see a problem.
We're throwing people at it. We're not shipping junk, right? We're making good enough product, but we're paying a price on that we don't even know we're paying, right? So we always want to start with SPI, eliminate the propensity for those defects to exist right from the jump.
So what we're showing, just to bring our audio only, people who are on their treadmill right now or in their car that are not watching the video version on our Reliability Matters YouTube channel, we're showing a pie chart with about 9 common defects, reflow type defects, and 70% of those defects. Let me eliminate here the AOI only defects. AOI, the possibility for only AOI machines to detect certain defects, and we're left with about 70% of defects that SPI can pick up. And they include bridges and opens and insufficiency, things like that.
Excessive.
70% of the trouble. So to your point, if I'm understanding it correctly, if you've only got a limited amount of dollars to spend and you can't get both, one can invest in SPI and potentially eliminate reflowing boards where 70% of the problems can be prevented before reflow.
It's true.
And if you need the remaining 30% of the other AOI only detectable defects, then AOI is going to make sure that nothing else gets out the door, right? Even though you have to rework it or throw it away or whatever your strategy is. Is that a good assessment of that?
It is, and it's funny because most people still want to start with that post-reflow AOI system, and the thinking obviously is that they're gonna catch everything they need to right there, more bang for the buck, and certainly yes, obviously now you can identify anomalies that occurred that aren't necessarily related to the print process, right? Is the part correct? Is the polarity correct? Is it there? Is it not? A solder joint, obviously, all of that comes into play with the post reflow AOI. But as you've shown, you're potentially having to deal with more, right, of that if you don't invest in SPI first and foremost. So that's right. It's kind of a, how do you want to, the devil the devil you don't know, right?
Right. So. Well, going back to your customer who didn't realize they had a problem until they realized they had a problem, that comes from the old adage, we don't have time to do it right, but we'll find time to do it over. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they just think that's just part of the manufacturing process, and it really doesn't have to be.
one of my go-tos, Mike, is if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you damn sure don't have time to do
That's
it right
right
the second time.
Right. The second time is more expensive than the first time. Puts your product at more risk. And and there are some, we have customers who have a policy of zero rework.
Yeah,
which
for
means
sure. Yes.
it doesn't mean they're perfect. It just means they throw away a lot of stuff. Right.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
and that can get pretty pricey.
And this is not the time to do that with part shortages and materials issues and everything else. So, yeah, that now is becoming paramount.
I can see parts buyers going through the dumpsters of companies with zero rework policies. Like homeless people will look for food. These people will look for components. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in our world, in the cleaning world, my day job, miniaturization, bottom terminated components have presented challenges. Because we have to get under these little 1 mil, 2 mil standoffs, right?
Yeah,
and high surface tension water under skinny areas. What challenges in your world, in the inspection world? What's your version of bottom terminated components? Maybe it is bottom terminated components, but what is your what are your challenges that modern technology throws at you that keeps your brain trust in San Diego working hard?
Sure. Well, I mean, you hit it on the head. Obviously, hidden joint, Mike, right, which BGA would fall into that category, is still something that we're somewhat limited in being able to do with a single top-down camera. Now, when I say that, I mean completely hidden, like under a shield or something like that. If I can see part of that component and at least one side of that solder joint, I can make some pretty good analogies from that, right? I can determine good, bad. But if it's completely hidden, now we have to move to a side camera scenario, which we have. But again, that does not allow you to get to the interior rows of solder joints in the case of a BGA or the likes of that. So, in that case, you've got two options, right? You've got X-ray. We basically take the position that if you go back to the SPI conversation that we just had, and you have a pre-reflow AOI, now I can give myself the opportunity to, with almost 100% certainty, know that I have control of the print process, know that I have control of the placement process. Therefore, now it's just the reflow process that could be the contributor to anything potentially bad that will happen. And there are still people that are taking that approach and haven't gone to the extent of X-ray. But certainly hidden joints, reflective surfaces up till very recently have been a bit of a challenge because of just all the lighting combinations and needs when doing inspection. But we've been able to overcome that pretty well with some alternate lighting methods. We see an adaptation to be able to do more types of inspections beyond just the standard surface mount inspections that we've been doing for years. Through hole has become a big part of our going forward plans. We've spent a lot of time and effort creating new algorithms for through-hole inspection. And I think, the other side of that is adapting to the changing needs of the industry, right? Electric vehicle has certain components that have very tall, capacitors, et cetera. So not only machine clearance, but also to be able to inspect, still at the board surface with that significant change in focal distance. And then of course with the semicon situation escalating here in the U.S. in particular with some of the investment that's being made, we're going to see more of that, more shiny surface applications. So these are the things that we're getting ready for and continuing to put ourselves in a position to provide those solutions when ready.
If it were easy, everyone would do this. So yeah,
that's right.
I've long said, almost to the point of ad nauseum when I give lectures, when I present papers, that proof that you should nurture your child is evident by the fact that if you don't tell your children you love them enough, they either grow up to be sociopaths and serial killers or bottom terminated component designers. And And
to
it's
torture the rest of us, right?
just to get back at society. Yeah, exactly. So tell your kids you love them, and maybe the next generation of assemblers will not have it so difficult. So I'm an engineer at an assembly house. I've been charged with purchasing either SPI or AOI. That's just inspection equipment, call it that.
Sure. Yeah.
What kind of questions should I be asking my supplier?
Well, yeah.
How do you make a smart buyer? What would you do?
I think there's a couple pieces to that, right? There's the obvious, and we see these matrices, spreadsheets come through every day, right? Fill in the blanks, right? Here's all the, how do you do this, and it gets involved. It gets involved with, camera types, right? Megapixel counts, resolutions, speed of programming, blah 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 blah, right? Really, Mike, the only things that really matter or should matter the most are accuracy and repeatability, right? It's from which the data comes from. It's from which those two things, or those two things provide, is that data set now that gives you confidence to make those changes, whether it be manually or automatically with some type of feed to an artificial intelligence engine. If you don't have those two areas completely locked down, all that other stuff doesn't really matter, right? Why do you care if you can program quickly if your system is not repeatable, it's not accurate, on and on and on, right? So I think it really starts with that, and and then I think you also have to look at things in this day and age from a provider's perspective, as to what their plans are going forward, right? If I'm a customer looking to buy just an SPI machine today, or maybe an AOI machine today, I really need to look at that supplier and say, what's important to them? Where are they spending their development dollars, if you will? What are they working on next? What can they do for me to get me to the next level, to turn me into a world-class manufacturer? And maybe that's with additional inspection systems for other areas of the process, conformal coating inspection, more back end, some of the other things that we've talked about. So it's never, in my mind, a single solution or a single system purchase, right? You have to be conscious of the fact that if I partner with this company today, then all of this is available to me going forward. Versus if I don't, potentially it's not, right? At least until we get to the point where, everybody can play with each other in the sandbox and share information and be connected and all of that good stuff, right? So CFX is working in that way, but I think that's the other very important piece to all of this. Once you get beyond, and it applies to AOI or SPI, right? First and foremost, I need accuracy and I need repeatability. Then we get into things like speed. We get into things like, again, programming time, data, blah blah blah. But you need to have those two locked down, and then basically consider what the potential is to grow and go forward with that supplier that you're considering, right? Can they get you where you need to be with, implementing all of these other things that they provide over time? It could be hardware, it could be software, but you really need to know and understand what it is that they're working on and what's important to them.
Yeah, and I'll throw in another one too. Those are all excellent points. So as an equipment manufacturer myself, as you guys are, many of our customers ask how long our machines are going to last, which is probably, it's a good question. Who wouldn't ask that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But it's probably not the right question. I think the better question is, how long will your machine be relevant to me? So, back in the day, there was, two types of videotapes. There was a Betamax videotape and the other format. And, if I had bought a Betamax video recorder with a 100-year warranty, it wouldn't have done me any good because they only lasted about 2 or 3 years before the other format won. And to me, it's how long will the machine will the service, will the product be relevant to me? How long will it be useful? How quickly will it become obsolete? And I'm convinced that when component manufacturers design components, they're not thinking about Joel, and they're not thinking about Mike. They're not thinking about inspection or cleaning. That's our problem. That's why we make the big bucks, right? So
somebody else's issue.
Yeah,
to deal
yeah.
with,
Their job is to perform a function in a package size that can, and you guys figure out how to use it. So, how much effort do your brainiacs in San Diego and in other parts of the world think about the future proofing of a machine and keeping it relevant for the longest period of time in a constantly evolving industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And we actually have an initiative going on right now, which is really very centric to that exactly, right? And getting ourselves to a place where we have more modularity, if you will, more we have significant commonality right now in our C platform in particular between our SPI tool and our AOI tool. And the parts commonality between those two systems is roughly 85-90%, right? What's different is the software. So now driving to get closer to making that software more common, right? And not only that, but do it in a way that it can be now applied to any other machine that we create as well, right? So we have the dispense process, the Neptune C+, we have our KYP3 pin inspection machine, so pin and terminal inspection. So we need to be conscious of the fact that from a sustainability perspective, we have to provide tools that would potentially be modular, be plug and play, and have a software structure that can be upgraded on a regular basis, thus making each of those machines basically a new machine every time we respin the software, right? And we've seen that in the past. We've had customers tell us in the past, wow, this machine's 5 years old, but I upgraded software. I have so much more capability today than I had when I bought this machine 5 years ago because you guys have just continued to push the envelope, build in more capability, more functionality into your software, and you provide that to me free of charge every time that rev spin occurs. So, we have to be conscious of that. We have to continue to think that this is what the market wants. This is what the market needs. We have 30 SPI machines that were manufactured in the early 2000s that are still running today, right? And they're still doing the basics, right? Can those machines run the latest and greatest software that we're offering for our other SPI tools? No, right? So there's OS limitations and so forth. So I guess to answer your question, it's a very big part of our approach and our thinking in how we can go forward, especially because we are so involved and really focused on expanding this technology where we can, right? Coming up with new systems, adapting to the market needs. I mentioned the conformal coating inspection or dispense process inspection machine. How do we adapt our current machines potentially, right, to make sure that speed to market is acceptable to address solutions that are needed today for, as I mentioned earlier, that EV high height situation, right? All those things are possible. They're going on, and then certainly, kind of looking to the future, migrating to other areas of the line outside of the PCB process in terms of where we can next apply this. But ideally we would do that with basically a kind of a generic system with a software structure that covers the entire gambit, right, of what we would potentially need to cover. So that's the approach, and we'll see where that goes.
Excellent. Final question, Joel. We'll let you go. We're going to turn you into Joel the fortune teller. What does the future hold for inspection technologies? Where are we going?
So, well, I think, the obvious one is the expansion of artificial intelligence, right? I mean, I think that kind of goes without saying. We're going to continue to push the envelope and utilize that to whatever degree we can to make the systems more, again, intuitive, user-friendly, reduce the need for the human interaction. We haven't talked about the fact that we have a labor crisis as well today, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to get better anytime soon. So, these are the things that manufacturers are looking for. I think that plug and play, common GUI concept is something that you're gonna see more of from everybody in this space as we go forward. Again, that's basically what the market's demanding, and as we see the need for that connectivity initiative with all of the other key systems on the line, it's just going to drive that further and further. More of that communication kind of leads right in to that conversation, being able to communicate with every piece of equipment on the line, be able to provide data that makes changes, actionable changes to self-heal, if you will, right? All going back to that, how do we stay competitive scenario. And then, as I said, migrating to other areas in the plant, right? Maybe aside from just looking at the PCB assembly piece proper and module build, box build, those types of things, but yet keeping everything in that realm of being able to utilize all of the benefits of the, in our case, the K-Smart software and the KPO software in those applications as well. So, lots going on. And again, we're squarely involved in working toward these initiatives today. And, we'll continue to keep our eyes and ears open for the next big thing, right? What comes next? And,
we're all looking for that, aren't we? Yeah.
To tackle it as it comes along. So.
Well, excellent. Well, Joel, my audience probably isn't aware of this, but for the last hour or so we've been talking, Joe's been promoted 3 more times. So,
I just happen to be the guy that has the dubious honor of keeping my hand on the rudder. We have a phenomenal team here. My relationship with my predecessor, my good friend, was pilot, co-pilot. So I just kind of slid into that chair. But as long as we can continue to keep our team intact and grow it, and we have significant growth plans, for the next 5 years, there will be opportunities for those folks. And, they're squarely behind the plan, which really isn't much different than the plan we had before I took over.
Well, as it said, there's no I in team, right? So
we keep it moving and rely on all the good people we have here to make it happen. And that's
excellent.
And that's how it works.
Excellent. Well,
that's
Joel, thanks. Yes, of course. Well, thanks for all your insight and sage advice, and thanks for agreeing to be a guest on the show. For my audience who would like to reach out to Joel, his contact information and Koh Young's information will be in the show notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just look down, and where it says "Show More," click that, and you'll see some contact information. And for those
worst
of you
case,
who are,
Google it, right? And you'll find it.
You're not hard to find. You're
it's
everywhere
out there. Well,
you're everywhere.
I think we're all out there everywhere.
We are. Yes. Yeah. That's
sometimes I think, how do I maybe not be so everywhere? Right.
I know, right? Yeah. Talk about exposed. I was in an elevator in Minneapolis at SMTAI. You were there as well at the show. And this is the first time someone said, "Are you Mike?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Mike Conrad?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is either a process server or I don't know." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "The one that does the podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so that was the closest thing to a Brad Pitt moment I've ever had. I felt like Brad Pitt that day, or Leonardo DiCaprio or something, only completely not like them. But
right.
But it was, I think the results of the pandemic, and like we talked about earlier, everyone going to virtual presentations, and everyone is sitting in front of a camera now, that we're seeing a lot of people are seeing us. We're seeing a lot of people that way, more so than we probably would have had we had to get on airplanes and travel for 4 or 5 hours.
You're absolutely right.
So
the infinite line of interviews, panel discussions, things that get broadcast to a lot of people has been much more significant, through this period, right? So,
and everything we do here is, it's evergreen. It has an afterlife. It's you go to a conference, you speak. Yeah, you go to a conference and speak. Yeah, for better or for worse. You go to a conference and speak one time, and by the time they get to their car, they've forgotten who you are. But this kind of stuff lives on, which is the reason we do this podcast, so that we can talk to subject matter experts like yourself, and memorialize that advice and that knowledge, because there are so many younger people coming into our industry, graduating with either with tech degrees or engineering degrees, and they don't teach the nuances of what you have to learn on the job in our industry. And a lot of the wise sages that have been around forever, the subject matter experts within an assembly company or an OEM, they're retiring, and they're taking those process secrets with them.
Yeah. So in many cases, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I appreciate you being on the show and my other guests, so that we can take some of that knowledge and suck it out of your brain and make it available for those who need to hear it and see it. So thanks for being part of that brain trust.
I hope it's been helpful. Very welcome, Mike. I really enjoyed it, and anytime you have need, I can make myself or certainly one of our other team members who's also very capable of speaking on many of these topics available. But I appreciate you doing what you do and putting this information out there. I think, as you said, it's really important, and it'll be more so as we go forward. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Joel, and hopefully I will see you soon. You're going to be in San Diego in January at IPC Apex Expo?
Absolutely.
That's the plan, right?
Yeah. Hopefully us and a lot of other people, right? We're planning on it. So.
Bring your swimsuit, go on the ocean, drag that boat back, and get your stuff off the ship, right? That might be the only way.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
All right. Well, thanks again, Joel. We'll talk soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for listening or watching the Reliability Matters podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and so many more. Also, be sure to check out my other podcasts, including the Concept to Creation podcast, where I feature conversations with entrepreneurs within the electronic assembly space, and the Innovations in Technology podcast, where we discuss innovative products within our industry. All 3 shows are also available in video format. Check out the Reliability Matters or Concept to Creation or Innovations in Technology podcasts on YouTube. Just search the show's name and you can find all 3 shows. Or go to MikeConrad.com. That's Conrad with a K. All 3 shows also appear there. Again, thanks for being part of my podcast family. I appreciate you being here. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And of course, keep doing it right. See you again soon.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.